welcome to the That's My Dad podcast. I have in the studio with us today David Williams. David's an old friend of mine, and we could probably talk about how we met for just a minute, David. I see that big smile. I know where you're headed with this.
That's because you remind me of it every time. I didn't know. Everybody was just a number, you know.
Yeah, so David was an all-star athlete in high school. He happened to have the misfortune of playing for a team that was my school's rivalry.
Yeah.
And so we've had this battle going on for 40 years now about the night where there's some discrepancy as to who hit who the hardest. But David was a running back and I was a defender, and I guess that's about all we need to say about that, because
there was a collision.
There was a collision, and to this day nobody can really agree with who took the brunt of that
damage that was done.
So that's how we met back many years ago. And then David went on to have a college football career, was a running back, and then went on to almost had a pro career. I think he blew a knee out of the Dallas Cowboys camp, didn't you?
Achilles tendon.
Yeah.
Blew it out. Actually, playing in a student-teacher basketball game.
Yeah.
And after that, they said, hey, come and try out. I said, there you go.
There you go. Dallas Cowboys down the drain.
But
so
I had prayed about that, and I said, God, I said, now if all it takes is hard work, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
I said, if you don't want me to go pro, you're going to have to show me, you know. And, of course, I was playing in that student-teacher basketball game. Someone stepped on my heel, snapped the Achilles. And even after that, I still, it's just a minor setback.
Yeah.
And so when I was offered the tryout, I said, well, if I don't go, I'll always wonder what if. And if I do go, they won't be seeing the full David Williams. They'll be seeing a rehab David Williams. Yeah. And it was actually Chan Gailey who ended up coaching Dallas, but he was with the Birmingham Fire then.
Yeah.
So that's how that happened. And after that, my life went in another direction.
That's right. I don't think you've wasted it though, by any means.
Well, I don't believe so. I mean, being a believer, we know that God's in control and He orders our steps and directs our path. So, no, I mean, being in His will is where I want to be.
Let's talk about your dad.
Okay.
Let's start there. They called him C-Boy, right?
Yes.
And C-Boy was a military guy.
Yes.
So I'm just going to kind of let you roll, okay? Right. Tell us about your dad.
Well, they called him C-Boy, and I never knew why. And I asked him why. And, I'd like to know the origin of nicknames, but no one could ever tell me. And I remember I was in first grade, and the teacher pulled me out in the hall. She said, what's your dad's name? And I told her, C-Boy. She said, no, it can't be. I said, that's all I've ever heard anybody call him other than me calling him Dad.
Yeah.
I didn't know his name was David, just like mine.
Yeah, there's like 15 of David Williams.
There's a bunch of
y'all
us.
keeping it in the family.
My son's David, and he was David. His dad's David. It's just a bunch of us. So, but he was just very firm, very tough. But, someone says, how do you spell love? And they said Time. And he gave me time. He would come home and we would play catch. You alluded to 15 years ago, you and your dad playing catch. And we would play catch every day. And I thought, well, we're just bonding. We're just playing catch. Yeah. I didn't know that he was doing the Mr. Miyagi, to me, wax on, wax off. And he would say, okay, now you run this route. And I would do that. And then he'd say, okay, now this time I need you to do that. And I would do this. He said, now do a stiff arm. And he was showing me all this stuff.
Yeah.
Now, at the time he was doing this, I'd never played organized football before. And so when I finally went out for a football team, I was just, head and shoulders above my peers. Yeah. But it was because of what he was doing. Mm-hmm. We lived in Germany for 4 years, and I thought I'd misplaced my winter boots. And I was really worried about that because you don't misplace something mom and dad has worked hard to provide for you. And I finally said, Dad, have you seen my boots? And he had taken my boots to a shoe shop and had sandbags sold on them. And he brought them back and he says, here you go. I said, well, what's that? He said, those are your boots. He says, you're going to run in those. And that's what I had to do, built-in ankle weights. And then later on, he introduced a vest filled with sand. And one time he took me out in the middle of the woods, and I said, well, where are we going? Nothing, he didn't tell me. And when we got out there, Scott, there was a big old hole filled with sand. He said, get in there. And, when Dad says it, you make it happen. Yeah. Actually, that was one of his sayings. Long before Nike, he was saying, make it happen, Yeah. So I got in that hole. He said, hold on to the edge and just pump your feet. And I would just have to run until he would always say, run until I get tired. But none of the other kids in the neighborhood had that, Yeah. And so I could see kids as a blur in my peripheral, riding their bike, shooting ball, playing marbles, doing normal things. But he would come home and he wouldn't say, how are you doing today? He'd say, you run today? And if my answer was no, he said, make it happen. And so that was it.
That was your dad's way of expressing his love for you. Yeah. That he knew he was preparing you for something that you were going to enjoy.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I mean, I was enjoying playing with him. And it's something that I've passed on to my son. It's something I'm sure Colin can relate to, because when you're doing that, it puts you on a path of isolation to a degree, because you're sacrificing and putting in time that other kids aren't and don't understand. And that can be lonely, but at the same time, it teaches you not to be a follower. There have been times now with my own son, back when he was in high school or middle school, I would say, stop. I said, look around. He'd look around the gym. I said, do you see any other kids out here? He said, no, sir. I said, that's because they're home playing a game or hugging a pillow. I said, you've got to fall in love with the process. You've got to put the time in. And that's something that my dad gave me. And, it's still paying dividends to this day.
So you and your dad had such a unique relationship, I remember, where he was kind of hard on you, but you loved him to no end.
Oh yeah. And I wanted to make him proud.
Wanted to make him proud.
Yeah. And that, when I first played my first game and I saw him on the sideline, saw Mom on the sideline, saw Dad Army buddies, and I bought him a 16 millimeter Kodak camera from the PX in Germany. I didn't buy it with the intentions of ever being the subject of the film. I just bought it because it was, you save a little bit of your allowance or grass cutting money, and it was a gift for Mom and Dad. Well, they would film the games, and they would show the home movies, and bore their friends and buddies with. But, I was thinking, man, they are proud. And it made me feel good to make them proud. And so I always wanted to make them proud.
Just for the listener, I think success can be measured by the way your kids turn out.
Yeah.
I think you got a lot to be proud of. Tell us about your kids.
Well, the twins went to JSU. One has her master's in emergency management. She's currently teaching. The other one has a couple of degrees, nuclear medicine, and she's a registered nurse. So she works for a couple of nursing companies. One is a recruiter and a nurse counselor. She also does this kind of thing, production, and she's an agent. So my grandkids are actors in movies and things like that.
Okay.
My youngest daughter, she was the first African American to get the Miss Gaston State. She got an honor scholarship. She was on their cheerleading squad, and as a result of her having the honor scholarship, it freed up space for another girl to get a cheerleading scholarship.
Okay.
So she's an entrepreneur.
She's got a business now?
Yeah, she has her own business, and then she works with the school system. My youngest, DJ, He graduated from Westbrook, played college basketball. He's teaching and coaching now. So that's what my kids are doing. I'm happy.
Are you proud of them?
Oh yeah, I'm.
So what do you think you instilled in them? What did it take to get to that?
Once again, when we're talking about hope and faith, instead of saying, do we got to go to church? No, you get to go to church, And then I would say, when you finish college. So I would always act as if it was a foregone conclusion. And I would say, okay, my mom and dad got this far academically. I've gotten this far. You guys have got to exceed me, and you've got to leave me in your dust. But I always tried to demonstrate a role model in front of them, that work ethic, that press. What I always tell kids, even today, I said, never allow someone's negative perception of you to be your reality. You never do that.
Never let somebody's negative perception of you become your reality.
Never do that. Because if God, if God says he loves you, that should trump everything. If he loves us so much that he gave his only begotten son for us, then I'm in. It doesn't matter who doesn't like me or doesn't love me. He loves me. And he says I'm wonderfully and beautifully made. And he's the author and finisher of my faith. And that drives me.
There's nothing to hold you back.
Yeah.
Your skin color hasn't held you back.
No.
And I tell the kids that come out of the poor socioeconomic, the white kids, the Hispanic kids, it doesn't matter how poor you are. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. It's all a matter of your perception of who you are in God's eyes. And here's a guy who's a living example of it. So that's one of the things I admire so much about you. And again, I couldn't care less what color you are. We grew up together as friends, and it just was never a factor. But I think you have the potential to speak so much to those kids who are locked into that. And so many of them are locked into that. So I want you to do something. If you'll look to your camera, for that young man who's out there who may be watching, who's thinking, I don't have a dad, I haven't had any guidance, I'm just going to be another whatever. What do you tell him?
You can't help the hand that you've been dealt. No one can. Scott didn't ask to be Scott Hilton. I didn't ask to be David Williams. I didn't ask for the mom and dad that I have. But I believe that that an all-knowing God can take whatever your situation is, if you put your faith and your trust in him, and help you overcome any obstacle. I really believe that. Because I believe that he has instilled in everybody a skill, a talent, that if you would just, walk in his will and accept that and know that it's going to be hard, it's going to be difficult. But that's life, period. Life is full of challenges. Life is full of peaks and valleys. But you have just got to walk that thing out, and you've got to, sometimes it's so tough that I've asked God, I say, hey, just help me learn what I need to learn through this process so that you can accelerate my deliverance. Help me to enjoy this minute. Help me to make it through this hour. Help me to make it through this day. And the Bible said that praise steals the enemy. And so sometimes, even when I'm going through the toughest times, I'll still praise him. I will still give God thanks for what he's doing in my life, because it truly is, it's a blessing. And hardships, they're going to be that way. We're born into hardships.
Now I want you to address the young man who's just found out he's going to be a father, or maybe the young man who's got small children, or maybe even teenagers, and he doesn't have a clue because he's never had a dad.
Wow.
What's it take?
Well, ironic you should mention that. I became a father between my senior year and freshman year. I didn't know at the time. I was getting ready for a basketball game, and I looked over, and a couple of my teammates were just kind of pointing at me and laughing. And I stopped getting dressed, and I looked at them and I said, what's wrong? What are you guys laughing about? And they said, yeah, you don't know? I said, no what? What are you? And then they said, they told me that I was going to be a dad. And I said, no way. I said, yeah. I said, how do you know? And I don't know. And so I went back and it was confirmed. That was the last game I played. I left that gym, and the next day I got a job. Wow. And I didn't go and tell the coach. I wasn't mature enough to know the proper way to exit. All I knew is that a child is on the way, and a child needs milk, a child needs diapers, a child needs clothes. And so I went and got a job, and turned out later there were twins. So what I've been doing my whole life, some of the things that you may admire or think, but I've been working hard to ensure that my children that were born while I was a young man and in college didn't suffer any lack because of my doing what I was doing. And then I've worked hard for my other two children so they wouldn't suffer a lack for what I've done. So be there for them. I think that even in spite of that, I went to court. I came home after my first football game, so it was Thanksgiving, and the police came to get me, and went to court. Never arrested me or anything. And so this was when I first saw God intervene in my life. So the judge says to the lawyer, says, "What is he doing?" And the lawyer said, "Well, he has a full ride scholarship to play college football." And he says, "Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to decrease the child support payments so that the arrearage doesn't get so large that it overwhelms them, because it's best for those kids and this young man if he goes to college and gets that degree." And that's what I did. And I told the judge, I said, "You can put whatever you want on that paper." I said, because I have to eat. I have to have clothes. I know they have to have clothes. They have to eat, because I'm going to meet and exceed whatever you put on that paper. That's what I told them. And I've always had them with me. Every last one of my children I've taught how to ride a bike. Every last one of them I taught how to swim, how to skate, all their dental appointments, And so I tried to make sure that I was, ever present in their life. And in spite of those obstacles, I've had to do, because you're looking at somebody that didn't do it the right way. I did it my way. And then God had to help me persevere through the judicial system, through you being one place, your kids being in another place, to be the dad. And my kids, I hope they would tell you that my dad has always worked hard. He's always demonstrated that.
I think they would. We did a little something kind of behind your back, I think. And we want to show you a video that we collected from a couple of your family members. You haven't seen this yet.
David is a type of husband that he takes care of everybody. When his son-in-laws came in, they treat him just like he's their dad. A lot of times they'll ask him for advice before they ask their own dad. So, I'm just so happy that my husband does love our kids, and that our kids are proud to say that, that he's their dad, and that he does an excellent job in taking care of everybody. He just takes care of people. He always has. He's a good example for what a father can be. And I think that's because he models his life after the Lord Jesus Christ.
Hello, my name is Brooke, and David Williams is my father. And I will try to do this without crying. Growing up, well, specifically in middle school, I attended school in the same district that my father taught in. And so it didn't take long for me to realize how important or how much of an impact he had on the kids who had been in his class, and just how fortunate I was to have him as a father and as an example of an adult, of a godly person, or just a good person and a great parent. And the older I get, the more I experience life, the more I'm reminded of how blessed I was to have him as a father and as a teacher and as a nurturer. He's just great. He's great. He has 4 children, 3 son-in-laws, 9 grandchildren, and somehow he manages to think of all of us in a way that we feel genuinely loved all the time. He manages to be that person for everybody all the time. And I know it is not without work. I know it is not without its trials and challenges, but he is just, and I know I'm biased, but I just think he's the best. So that's what I got. That's my daddy. And I love him. And I'm grateful that he is being honored for who he is. And I hope there are many more to come. So thank you.
One of the things that I can remember him doing a lot with us is teaching us how to read. I feel like by that he inspired our gift of imagination.
Yes.
To imagine beyond the world that we see. And one of the books that he oftentimes read to us at night before bed.
I'm interested to see what this is.
What's this?
I remember that book.
He would read us stories from here. He would take us to the library. I remember he took us to the Gaston Library, and that's where we got our first library card, and we felt like that card was golden.
I thought it was a Visa.
We thought it was golden. And then he did something that was very phenomenal. Something that I think every parent should do with their children.
Okay, what?
He challenged us to each week read a book, and at the end of the week we would give him a book report. And if we did it successfully, we got money.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
So I would like to thank you, Dad, for the positive influence that you've had on our lives, for inspiring us to imagine our world beyond the world that we see, and for teaching us that reading is essential,
fundamental, and allowing us to then pass it on to our own kids. Thank you, Daddy.
My father is a father to a lot of people who are fatherless. He likes to support people who don't have the support. Give advice to people who can give advice. And I actually work with my father, so I've got kind of a leg up on the insight with him. He is a very, very influential person. Also, a very stern person. A man of his word. My dad is a very, very, very funny guy. Everybody likes being around him. He can hold a conversation for a very long time. And I think the last thing I want to say about my father is he's my best friend. He's always there to support me. Gives me money when I ask for it, even though I probably don't deserve it. And always leading me on the right path and putting me in the right direction to reach my goals.
Pretty neat.
So, David, how does it feel after all these years of hard work and commitment to have your wife and kids to admire you that much?
Hey, it's awesome, but you don't do it for that. It's not over. I'm still on this side of dirt, but I do it because I just think that's how we're supposed to do it. That's how we're supposed to be. I don't want to give the enemy any space, and I don't want any of them to feel like they're not loved or that I'm not standing in the gap for them.
Yeah. Well, David, you're an inspiration to a lot of people. my hope is that there's some young man who's listened or watched tonight who says, hey, I can be that guy. I can do that. If he can do it, I can do it.
You can do it better.
And we've talked about this project, this That's My Dad project. It's not about how many views we get. It's not about all the social media stuff. What it's about is one thing. It's about one kid being inspired and changing the generations to come because he decides he's going to change his family and do the right thing like you did. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me, Scott.
Been a lot of fun. We share a lot of memories, and we could talk all night about. But but this has been good. So we're going to wrap up this episode of That's My Dad podcast with David Williams. Hope you join us next week. We're trying to inspire young men to be great dads, and we're trying to break cycles of generational fatherlessness. So come back next week and we'll have another great story. Thanks.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. This has been the That's My Dad podcast with our host, Scott Hilton, where we're on a mission to break the cycle of generational fatherlessness and inspire fathers to become great dads. We'll be back here every Monday night at 6 p.m. We'll see you then.